Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Joe's Hot Takes. I'm Joe. I'm your host today. Today, let's talk about public schools versus charter schools. It's an interesting topic and definitely some questions out there. So, kind of the overview of this topic is how do they differ? What are the pros and cons, and what's the impact on students, teachers, funding? Look, education shapes our future. It's our students. They grow up and they become our leaders. They become our business owners. They become our colleagues at work. So, understanding school choices helps parents and communities make informed decisions. So, education really, truly shapes our future, and so that's why this discussion is important. So, let's talk about the difference between public schools and charter schools and some of the things that go on. I come from a background of 30 plus years of law enforcement. I worked as a police officer. I've worked in the courts as a court security officer in a superior court, and I've worked as a security supervisor for a safety and security at a pretty large school district. So I have a little background. So I think what I have to share is comes from a place of knowledge and experience. But again, these are questions. I'm not trying to take a side. I'm not trying to make a point one way or the other. I just want to ask the questions, and let's get everybody talking. So that was our opening. So let's look at segment number 1 of this podcast, and let's talk about teacher requirements. So public schools require certified teachers. So that ensures standardized training and qualifications. All teachers at public schools have to be certified. Charter schools, at least in Arizona, on the other hand, do not require any certification. So it really allows for more flexibility, but it does raise questions about quality. So, I guess I have to ask, does this difference affect student learning? So as experienced professionals without certifications, is that effective? Do those make effective teachers? Or do we need individuals with a certification and a degree to be our teachers? So which way do we go here? I don't know. I kind of come from a field of experience really speaks volumes. You go to you graduate high school and you decide I want to be a teacher, and so you go to college and you take all your classes and you get your teaching certificate and you graduate college, and you're in your 20s and now you're going to be a teacher, and you're going to teach either elementary or middle school or high school. And what do you really bring into the table? What experience and background are you bringing? You're bringing the knowledge and training that you received in school, but what about real life experiences? Excuse me. So when I see experienced professionals that come into the field of teaching and bring with them experience, real world experience, people that have worked in finance, people that have worked in construction, people that maybe have worked in law enforcement or in other areas of education, government jobs, different places where they're bringing actual experience and knowledge to the classroom. It's a big deal. So, let's talk about it. Let's just start cutting this thing all up. All right, segment number 2. Let's talk about student performance and graduation standards. So, public schools and charter schools both follow state guidelines. Okay, so they're equal in that. They follow state guidelines for performance and graduation standards. Here's something interesting. If you didn't know this, I'll share it with you. A D, or 60%, that is still a passing grade in both systems. So you can get a D in every class and still graduate high school with a D. It's awesome. So are we setting the bar too low for students for their success? And the impact of the graduation requirements on workforce readiness and college preparation. how does that impact that? If I have students coming out of high school with 60% passing grades, I mean, is that bar too low? Are those students can be successful as they enter college or as they enter the workforce? Good questions. Why a D? I don't understand that. So let's talk about, and I'm gonna bring this all together, but let's talk about now special needs students. Okay, public schools must accept all students, including those with special needs. Charter schools are legally required to follow federal guidelines, but public schools still serve a far greater number of special education students. So I did a little research on this, and I have a little, personal experience in this. What I found is at a charter school, they can be a little more selective. They can say, no, we're not gonna take this student for whatever reason. We don't have room in our classes. Whatever their reasoning is, we're not going to take this student. Public schools don't have that opportunity. Public schools must take all students that enroll. Now, excuse me, enrollment's a big deal, and we're going to talk about that too. But what happens when I allow a charter school to say, I'm going to take this student, but not this student? And does that force special needs students away from charter and into public schools? And if so, how does that affect everything? And how does that affect our learning? And I just talked about our D performance standard, which I don't understand, but now let's move into, let's say we have these special needs students. Now I've seen this firsthand where we have disruptive students in a classroom, and how do you balance the special needs and support with classroom learning and disruptions? So I've witnessed, and it happens. If you didn't know this happens, it happens every day, multiple times a day, at virtually every school in the public school system. At virtually every school, you're going to see something like this virtually every day. Student acts out in class. Student refuses to listen to the teacher, talking back. Then student gets upset, starts knocking things off the desk. Now the class is disrupted. No student is learning at this point. If that student starts to become more unmanageable or aggressive, then what we see is the teachers and aides removing all of the students from the class and segregating the problem child. Now they have the problem child segregated to the classroom all by themselves. All the other students have been moved to another location where they're not learning. They're just waiting around. While the student that's being disruptive is continuing to be disruptive. And in some cases, and I've witnessed this, there's plenty of supporting videos and documents for this. Student starts destroying the classroom, literally destroying the classroom, biting teachers, kicking teachers, fighting, carrying on for a long period of time, and nobody will touch this child because they're afraid that if we touch the child, we're going to be charged with assault or something else. And so that's when either the police are called or school security that is trained to remove these disruptive students from those situations. But it really poses a question. So if I'm a charter school, do I want students that I know are going to, or that I know have a history of acting out like that? Do I want those students in my charter school? No, of course not. Of course not. So I will find a way to not allow them in my charter school, but we're certainly going to have to take them in the public school system. So that's one contrast that we see. Let's jump into funding and financial oversight. So schools receive funding from state funds, from property taxes, and from bonds. So bond money often covers things like buildings and supplies, but not salaries. So what we see in the charter schools You see, in many cases, these very nice schools, they're well constructed, they're clean, they're neat, they're very organized because that funding is being put into kind of a business. Now let's move over to the public schools. Well, we've all seen how the public schools look. Some of them are new, but some of them are old. and what we see is financial waste and misuse of funds. In one school district I'm aware of, they were remodeling the front offices for security to upgrade their security so that there were now you could segregate anybody that came into the school had one point of entry. They had to come in the front door, and then they were confined to the lobby area. So they were segregated from the students. So you couldn't just walk in and walk onto campus. You would have to get through this secure lobby to be able to get to campus. And this particular school district went out for bond, got all kinds of money, and started doing the right thing. They started remodeling these front lobbies. Well, guess what happens? Somebody comes in that is a high-ranking member of the school district in the superintendency level, and now this principal at this school says, "Hey, since we're remodeling and since you're tearing all this out, I would like to expand my office. I'd like to move this wall over here. I'd like to change this. I'd like to change that." And what should have been maybe a $50,000 or $75,000 remodel job just turned into a $250,000 or $300,000 remodel job. Why? There's no reason for that. That was not the focus of where that money was supposed to go, but it went. So then what happens? They run out of money. So all of the schools don't receive the remodel and the secure lobby that they were supposed to receive because other schools took advantage of and wasted the money to make their particular campus look special. So how about TVs, computers, and I already talked about unnecessary renovations, and leaving other critical security updates incomplete. So I also am aware of a district where they had probably, I'm going to say hundreds to be safe, but it was probably thousands of 75-inch Samsung smart TVs. And the idea was to put these big giant screens in every classroom, and so they could, put information up on these screens. For whatever reason, that turned into a flop, and these TVs sat in a warehouse for years. Many months, and in some cases more than years. So wasted money. These things are now obsolete. New advances in technology have came along, and new TVs and new monitors and new programs are out there. So these TVs become obsolete. So all this money was wasted, absolutely wasted, to purchase all of these TVs. And let me remind you, folks, we're not talking about going down to Best Buy or Walmart and buying these TVs. We're talking about government contract. So a TV that you and I would probably pay $500 to $1,000 for, I guarantee you on a government contract, multiply that by 5 or 10, probably. So anyway, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we wasting the funds? And why not some financial oversight? So how do we ensure that taxes and bond money are being spent wisely? And let me circle back. Are we good with a 60% passing grade? Are we good with that? With all of our bond money and our tax money going to these supporting schools and education? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there, throwing it out. So let's talk about enrollment. So how do these schools make money? Because they have to survive somehow. You have to pay teachers' salaries. You have to buy supplies. You have to buy TVs to put in a warehouse. So the public schools must accept all students. If you want to enroll They have to take you. And believe you me, they want you. They want that. They need that enrollment. So they'll take you. Any student that can be brought in, they're going to take them because that's money. That every student equals a dollar amount of financial support. Okay. What we're finding is generally charter schools recruit top students. So that sometimes leaves the struggling students behind. So where do the struggling students go? They end up in public school because they are not going to make the cut to make the charter school. So they're going to be recruiting these top students. Now, with that, the discussion is, are the charter schools now creating an unfair advantage for certain students? Are they creating an unfair advantage for some students that are going to excel and get better grades and do better in school and have a better support system versus the students that are pushed off to the public school system? So it's just a question. It's just a topic for discussion. There's also what we see as a little rise in homeschooling. And so why are parents choosing this option? Why do parents decide, I don't want my child going to public school or charter school? And I think what we're finding is parents prefer to homeschool. They can keep, quite often in public schools, we see the influence of the teachers. And these teachers influence our students, and topics such as transgender or LGBTQ, topics about current events and how they're portrayed to the students. I've talked about the media in the past podcasts. Do our schools, do our teachers put their own spin on current events to our students and push their own agendas? I don't know. Do they? But maybe that's why a lot of parents said, you know what? I don't want my child in public school. I want my child at home where I control what they learn and how they learn it and at what rate they're learning. And so when there's a disruptive child in the public school and my child gets pulled out and put in the library for 1 or 2 class periods with no learning, I don't want that. I want my child at home with me where I control their learning. So that's definitely something. Now there is a there is a program, the ESA Empowerment Scholarship Account, that's out there, which assists with funding and it can support homeschooling families. So there are some funds and some financial support for homeschooling families. So that's out there as well. All right. So let me jump into, sorry, I keep clearing my voice, folks. Education reform and raising the bar. So I just want to talk about this really quick. Should we raise academic standards rather than lower them for broader acceptance? Because it seems as though we've lowered the standard down to a 60% so that we can have broader acceptance. This is where you see your charter schools coming in saying, well, we're not going to take the broader acceptance. We want the cream of the crop. We're going to recruit top students. That's what we're going to do. And on the other side of that coin, complete other side, you have the homeschoolers where the parents are saying, I don't want my child in a public school setting. I want to teach my child. I want them to learn our feelings and beliefs as well. So now what happens is we move, as we graduate high school, from either homeschool, charter school, or public school. Now it's time for us to move on to college and into the workforce. So what happens when we produce D students? So are you going to hire a D employee? So you have this student that comes in that was homeschooled, or a student that comes in that was a charter student that says, well, here's my resume and here's my GPA through school. I excelled. I was a member of all of these programs and sports. I participated in sports. I participated in extracurriculars such as debate class or, you know, entrepreneurial classes and things like that, or robotics, whatever it was that they were participating in, versus you have this large number of students who will now start to enter the workforce from public schools, where they're going to say, well, you know, I graduated with everybody else. So yeah, I mean, I have a degree, or I have a diploma. How valuable is that diploma if we know that it only takes a 60% to get it? That's a big question. So maybe we should raise that bar. Do you think we should maybe raise that bar and say, look, we need passing grades of 70, 75% or better to get a diploma. Otherwise, you're going to have to go get yourself a GED. And I think that an employer can look at that and go, I have an applicant here that brings to me a GED. I have another applicant here that brings me a diploma. I already know that the student with the diploma came in with a higher GPA. Or better yet, I have a student that shows up that said, look, I went to a private chartered school. I got straight A's all the way through school. I went to college. I got straight A's. I've been in the workforce and I'm ready to come to work for you. When you take those three categories, a GED, a diploma, or somebody that's definitely excelled and shows higher grades and higher standards, which one do you want to take in your workforce? Just throwing it out there. So maybe in public schools, maybe there's too much focus on personal growth and acceptance instead of professional and social development. Do we not need to develop our students, teach our students how to blend in with society and become a productive member of society and teach professionalism? I think so. Personal growth, acceptance, those are all good things, but those need to be taught at home. Mom, dad, that's your job. Okay. So some ideas out here. Do we bring back life skills courses like financial literacy, resume writing, professional communication, things like that? When I was in school, I know it was a long time ago, when I was in school, they still had home ec, where, sure, I learned a little bit about cooking. I learned how to sew a button on my shirt when the button fell off. We learned how to fill out a checkbook and run a checkbook registry. I know nobody really uses that anymore, but boy, that is really good knowledge and information so that when I look at my bank statement, I understand everything. So I wonder if we should bring back some of those type of courses back into our school districts. What about elevate and reduce financial waste in education? So, you know, when I say elevate, you know, we want to put to the forefront. We're not going to put up with, as taxpayers and people that go out and approve bonds for these schools, we're not going to put up with your waste. We're not going to put up with it. So we're going to reduce that financial waste in the education process. I think that's something that we should talk about. How do we do that? How do we control that as citizens that are paying the bills? And then I think we need to strengthen our teacher training and curriculum and development. The teachers really need to teach. They need to teach curriculum and they need to teach, you know, life skills, and leave your personal thoughts and your personal beliefs out of the classroom, because that's not the place for it. So really, teachers need to get in there and teach the curriculum and guide these students and help them become productive adults. And with that, I get it. Teachers' salaries are not that great. And that's something that we need to also, when we talk about reducing financial waste in education, we can evaluate that and say, well, do superintendents of schools need to make $150,000 or $200,000 a year? You know, do we need to spend that kind of money on TVs or remodeling or sports programs, things like that. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. How do we control that? So, folks, I'm sorry this podcast went a little longer. I usually try to keep them at about 30 minutes. So, but anyway, I just wanted to put that all out there. So let's just kind of, I just want you to think critically about education policy, and about education reform. Get involved. Attend school board meetings. Go and listen, and you'll be surprised at what you find out. But be part of the conversation, and let's see what we can do to help our students become just more than 60 percenters. Let's see what we can do about making our students 75, 100 percenters. What can we do to ensure equality and fairness and equity across the board for all of our students, not just charter school or homeschool, but for all students? But we really need to focus on what's really happening in these public schools and really ask those questions and don't be afraid to challenge them. So anyway, thanks everybody. I really appreciate you listening in. And as always, stay curious.